Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Jason Miller. Tonight on the Evan Miller Report, Daesh deputy leader is killed in an Iraqi airstrike. We have the latest out of the region. Also on tonight's program, the humanitarian truce in Yemen is barely holding as violence resumes over in that country tonight. In Somalia, they execute two assassins who tried to assassinate MPs in the Somali capital. Japan's chief negotiator of the Trans-Pacific Partnership said there is no change to a goal of holding ministerial-level talks despite the U.S. Senate blocking debate on fast-track powers for President Obama to pass the TPP yesterday. We got the news on that. And here in North America, a Conservative Party candidate in Canada has resigned his candidacy, revealing it was a stunt. We'll have all those stories and more, plus the White House making a politicizing the Amtrak crash in Philadelphia, which Corey Evan has more on.
Yes, I've got the latest on that crash, and if the driver's still alive, well, based on what I know now, he won't have a job much longer. Harriet Tubman is on my bullcrap list for a very good reason, as you'll find in our continuing battle against global socialism. Uh-oh, more Takata airbag recalls? Oh, great. Jay, take notes. Wells Fargo pays out big bucks to a St. Louis woman. And say goodbye to CSI, CBS viewers. That's all coming up in your conservative news source, the Evan Miller Report, starting now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media. Here now, Jason Miller.
And a very good evening on this Wednesday, May the 13th, 2015. I'm Jason Miller, along with Corey Evan this evening. Thank you for joining us tonight.
And that's my turn? There we are.
Turn. There you are, sir.
I'm sorry about that. I didn't know you were tossing over to me. But it's going to be an entertaining report tonight. It's all about entertainment, but it's going to be entertaining to listen to, and I've got a bag of popcorn ready for it.
Oh, goody joy. It's Wednesday night.
It's popcorn, Jake.
It is Sackheads Radio Night.
What does it mean?
On the old SHR Media Network.
Yes.
So that's why
Hope
Corey
I got
has
enough
the
popcorn for that,
out,
too.
And yes, he's going to be having the drinks out tonight as we listen to Sackheads later on tonight. That's at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific.
Non-alcoholic.
Of course not. We always drink root beer out on this show.
Cheers.
Yes, it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, Sackheads Radio, 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. That's after our friendly, exceptional conservative out of Washington, D.C., Ken McClinton, later on tonight, here on the SHR Media Network. All right, folks, we do have a lot of news to get to tonight. The second-in-command of Daesh has been killed in a U.S.-led coalition airstrike in northern Iraq, according to the Iraqi Ministry of Defense. Abdul Rahman Mustafa Mohammed, also known as Abdul Allah al-African, was at a mosque near Tel Afar that was targeted, according to spokesman Brig General Tashin Ibrahim. However, the U.S. military later denied coalition planes had attacked the mosque. In recent weeks, there were unconfirmed reports that Afrin had been taken temporary charge of Daesh operations. Iraqi sources claimed that the Daesh leader Abdul Bakr al-Baghdadi had been incapacitated as a result of an airstrike in Iraq back in March. General Ibrahim told the BBC that Afrin was killed alongside dozens of militants who had been meeting at the Al-Shadar Martyrs Mosque in the village of an Al-Integ near Tel Afar, where he was reportedly a well-known preacher. Tel Afar in the northern province of Neba was also seized by ISIS back in Daesh in June 2014. Over to Yemen now, where Yemen's humanitarian ceasefire has come under significant strain in its first 24 hours today, disrupted by a Saudi-led coalition airstrike fighting between rival sides in a strategic province and shelling by coalition warships west of the port city of Aden. The airstrike in Aden province was in response to an attempt by Shiite rebels known as the Houthis to send a military convoy to reinforce their forces in Aden, according to Yemeni security officials. There were no immediate reports of casualties or any damage from that airstrike. The heaviest violence on the ground was in the southwestern province of Taziz, where the Iranian-backed rebels and their allies' forces loyal to the ousted president al-Din Shaheen have for weeks been fighting forces loyal to the nation's internationally recognized president. 2 suspected members of the Islamic group Al-Shabaab have been executed by firing squad in the Somali capital. A military court in Mogadishu found them guilty of killing 5 people, including 4 members of parliament in Somalia. One of the MPs was the popular female singer Sindhu El-Warsimi, who was killed in a drive-by shooting in July. Al-Shabaab outfits the strict Saudi-inspired Wahhabi version of Islam and is battling the UN-backed government to create an Islamic State in the region. This is not the first time Al-Shabaab suspects have been executed by the Somali authorities. At the time of Miss Al-Warsimi's death, an Al-Shabaab spokesman told the BBC that the singing MP was targeted for her politics, not her music. Al-Shabaab often targets politicians, bombing the hotels in which they stay in Mogadishu, and have attacked the presidential palace at least 4 times in the last 3 years. To the Asian Pacific region now, where Tokyo, and apparently I'm having some trouble with that story, so I do apologize, ladies and gentlemen. We'll get back to that story here on the program. Meanwhile, we'll stay in the Asian Pacific region and update you on the story regarding the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Japan's chief negotiator of a proposed Pacific Regional Trade Deal, also known as the Trans-Pacific Partnership, as I mentioned, said that there is no change to the goal of holding ministerial-level talks despite the U.S. Senate blocking debate on a fast-track bill yesterday in the U.S. Senate. Koji Tsunoda said it is unclear if ministers could make a political decision on the 12-nation TPP deal if the trade promotion bill in the United States isn't passed, Jean said. Ministers from the 12 countries are expected to hold talks from May 26th to May 28th in the Philippines. Torreska, speaking to reporters before heading to Guam for the TPP chief negotiator talks from May 15th, said no effort will be spared in pursuing progress on U.S. trade negotiations. As we stated yesterday, U.S. Senate Democrats delivered a major blow to President Obama's trade agenda, blocking debate on the bill that would have allowed President Obama to fast-track access to that bill. It is said that that bill may come back into the U.S. Senate tomorrow or Friday. For those of you listening on podcasts, be Thursday or Friday of this week. All right, now back to that story on drones in Tokyo over in Japan, where they have been banned in municipal parks after one was discovered on the roof of the Prime Minister's residence, according to reports. Japanese media outlets have reported that the devices are no longer allowed in any of the 81 public parks in Japan's capital city. According to the reports, offenders could be fined up to 265 euros. The move comes after a drone carrying radioactive material landed on the roof of the Prime Minister's residence. A man was arrested over the incident in late April after handing himself in. Tokyo police said Yosono Yamato, 40, was protesting over the Japanese government's nuclear energy policy. According to the Japanese news agency, Tokyo's metropolitan government said the drones posed a danger to children. The site reports that officials said they had no intention of imposing the penalty, but they asked people to comply. Over to the UK now, where Prime Minister David Cameron is to set out a string of new powers to tackle radicalization in the UK, saying the UK has been passively tolerant society for too long. The Prime Minister will tell the National Security Council a counter-extremism bill will be in the Queen's speech on May the 27th. The bill will include new immigration rules, powers to close down premises used by extremists, and extremism disruption orders. Mr. Cameron will say a poisonous extremist ideology must be confronted. In other political news in the UK today, the Labour's National Executive Committee will meet to draw up a timetable to elect a new party leader. Theresa May has suggested economic migrants rescued from the Mediterranean Sea while trying to reach Europe should be returned home, and secret letters sent by the Prince of Wales to the Labour government ministers a decade ago will be published after a long legal battle. The proposals were first set out by Home Secretary Theresa May before the general election, but the Conservatives were unable to secure the backing of their then Liberal Democrat coalition partners for the measures. There is likely to be some opposition in the new parliament on the grounds that some of the plans could infringe on people's right to free speech, according to the BBC's Home Affairs correspondent Danny Shaw. And we'll keep you up to date on any of that new radicalization bill going on in the UK as the information becomes available. And moving on tonight, ladies and gentlemen, to Canada tonight, where a Conservative Party candidate has resigned his candidacy, revealing it was a performance art project. According to CTV News, that Chris Lloyd resigned as the Conservative candidate for a seat in a Liberal-leaning Montreal district yesterday, according to a Conservative Party spokesperson. Lloyd said he only became a candidate because he was the only applicant. In interviews, he said he only wanted to mess with the party. Lloyd was considered an interesting but unusual candidate for the Tory government in Canada. He was not projected to win this October, CTV News has said. Lloyd has been sending letters to the Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, since 2001, according to his Dear Prime Minister website. His Twitter feed has several photos of him with Stephen Harper as well. In a letter to Harper yesterday, Lloyd wrote, quote, "Though my candidacy with the Conservative Party was short-lived, I remain hopeful that this experience provides fresh insights into the nature and the relationship between the personal and the political in the age of social media. I hope the dialogue continues," end quote. He also wrote with the project he wanted to test the limits of free speech and explore the possibilities of voicing independent views, and that making art is an inherently political act. Can't understand what he is saying there. It is not a joke when you run for political office. And for this one to think it was a performance art project to run for political office, not only is he messing with himself, he's messing with the people in Montreal. I can't believe how the local Conservative Party is going to think of him after they're done having to clean up that mess.
Holy cow, that is one of the worst things I've ever heard of. Running actually for an office and then deciding, admitting to everyone, it was just a joke. Vote the other guy. Wow. Oh,
No
Canada.
kidding. Yeah, Canada indeed. I think that they're in a very sticky situation that has nothing to do with maple syrup.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, on to some a little bit more somber news. Afghan police say that at least 5 people have been killed in an attack on a Kabul hotel that was packed with foreigners awaiting a concert. According to the U.S. Embassy in Afghanistan, they have confirmed that a U.S. citizen was killed at the Palace Park Hotel. The police say they have rescued 54 people and that a gunman has been shot dead. Afghan security forces ended the assault early on Thursday morning after a siege lasting over 5 hours. 5 people were killed, as we mentioned, and 5 were wounded, including foreigners and Afghans, in the attack on Park Palace Guest House. The hotel was due to host a concert by the popular Afghan singer Atul Hussain. India's ambassador to Afghanistan, Amir Shaneen, has tweeted that there had been a few Indian casualties, among others. According to U.S. Embassy spokeswoman Monica Cummings, she told the AFP news agency that 1 U.S. citizen has died in the attack. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Corey Evan. He has the latest developments out of that Amtrak crash that crashed in Philadelphia last night from Washington, D.C. to New York. Is the very latest on a very tragic 24 hours, not only for the folks of Philadelphia, but for the folks of Washington, D.C. and New York as well. Corey?
Thank you very much, Jay. The latest coming to me from NBC News, of all places. And here are just a few notes at the top here. They say that a new safety system would have prevented the accident at the NTSB. They say the train was going at 106 miles an hour, and authorities still have not accounted for everyone on board, and 8 passengers are critically injured because they, quote, rattled around in the train car a lot. Amtrak Regional 188 wasn't equipped with a new safety system that Congress has mandated all trains to have by the end of the year, so when it hurtled around a curve in Philadelphia at twice the speed limit, the entire train derailed rather than automatically being brought to a safe stop, federal safety investigators said today. Authorities raised the death toll to 7 in the crash Tuesday night and said they still hadn't accounted for all of the 243 people on board. The train was traveling at 106 miles an hour as it entered a curve where the speed limit is just 50, according to Robert Sumwalt, a member of the NTSB. The entire train, a locomotive, and 7 passenger cars derailed immediately, he said. But Mr. Sumwalt said it didn't have to happen. Amtrak, like all other U.S. railroads, is required by law to implement a safety system called Positive Train Control, or PTC, which is supposed to slow the train down pretty much immediately and enforce speed limits by the end of the year. Trains in the Northeast Corridor are being updated, but crews hadn't yet gotten to Amtrak 188, Sumwalt said. The NTSB has lobbied vigorously for PTC since 1970, declaring it one of the agency's top priorities, and Sumwalt said Wednesday, quote, had this system been installed, the accident would not have happened. Well, if it's been ongoing since 1970, I'm thinking, what on earth has been dragging their attention away from it? But a bipartisan group of U.S. senators is seeking to delay the PTC mandate until at least 2020 at the behest of railroads that have asked for more time, which the NTSB said is in its list of top requests for 2015, means more preventable collisions and derailments, more lives lost, and more people sustaining injuries that change their lives forever. A city official said hospitals treated more than 200 patients. The train was believed to have carried 238 passengers and 5 crew members, meaning it would have been about half full. Sam Phillips, the city's emergency management director, asked people who walked away from the crash to call Amtrak at 1-800-523-9101 so they could be accounted for. Again, Jay, that number is 800-523-9101, just so we can note it on the Facebook page. The 7 dead comprise 4 people whose bodies were found inside the train, 2 who were found outside, and 1 who died at a hospital, according to Lieutenant John Walker to NBC Philadelphia. Dozens of people were still being treated in Philly hospitals with injuries ranging from cuts and broken bones to head trauma. Chief Medical Officer Herbert Cushing said Temple University Hospital, where most of the seriously injured were being treated, had 8 patients in critical condition who he said are going to do just fine. Almost everyone has rib fractures, Cushing said, which indicates that they rattled around in the train car a lot. They're all ranging in age from their early 20s to their 80s, according to Cushing, and patients include citizens from Spain, Belgium, Germany, India, and Albania. The engineer was also injured and gave a statement to police, according to Mr. Nutter, the mayor of Philadelphia. Investigators spent the day combing for clues at what Senator Pat Toomey described as a horrific and heartbreaking scene. The mayor vowed not to call off the search until crews had checked out every inch of the wreckage. It damaged all 7 passenger cars, including some that were overturned and one that was mangled. No surprise there, Jay, because this train's construction actually, I think it dated back to the 70s, didn't it?
Yeah, I believe those train cars are all the way from the 1970s, which suggests that it was not up to the highest safety standards it possibly could be. We all remember.
Not even close. I mean, a train, at least as far as my experience goes, a train should be replaced after 3 decades. I mean, they needed a new train in, the mid-2000s?
Probably earlier than that, and we remember that Amtrak crash here in Glendale, and the train was up to date, and they had those brand new cars that would have new safety features in them that would protect the cars if those cars should fall over, and it saved significant lives. It did not do so in this, and we're obviously, ladies and gentlemen, we're not even going to confirm how many have died yet because it is just too early to tell at this point. But I would say,
but we will
if
put
these
any
trains
updates on the
would have been
Facebook.
replaced, these train cars and that engine would have been replaced in the first place, I don't think we'd be talking about this, at least not in this level of what we're talking about today.
Right, and that engineer who gave the statement to police, I'm sure he'll have a hand in the investigation as well.
Certainly right. What else do you have in U.S. news today?
I've got Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. He's back in federal court for closing arguments from prosecutors arguing he should be executed and defense attorneys hoping for and life imprisonment. Define mercy at the hand of the taxpayer. Tsarnaev is sitting between his lawyers and at the defense table and appears to be looking through some papers while resting his face on his hand. Prosecutors have portrayed Tsarnaev as a callous, unrepentant terrorist who carried out the deadly 2013 attack with his radicalized older brother Tamerlan. They say he deserves the death penalty, which we here at the Evan Miller Report agree with. Tsarnaev's lawyers admitted he participated in the bombings, but told the jury he was heavily influenced by Tamerlan. 3 people were killed and more than 260 injured when twin bombs exploded near the finish line. The jury could begin deliberating later Wednesday. And at the same time, the James Holmes trial in Boulder, Colorado is still going on. When it comes to a close later this summer, the jurors will first have to decide whether the Aurora shooting perpetrator, who killed 12 and wounded 70 when he opened fire in the crowded movie theater, is innocent by reason of insanity, a defense many experts say is a long shot in this case. If jurors find him guilty, then they'll have to determine whether Mr. Holmes should get the death penalty as requested by prosecutors or life without parole. Yeah, these 2 high-profile cases are taking place against a backdrop of increasing ambivalence about the death penalty in America, where national support has dropped from close to 80% in the 90s to just 56% today. That ambivalence is particularly apparent in the states where the trials are taking place. The verdicts, particularly if life sentences are returned in such high-profile cases, could end up offering significant insight into shifting views on the penalty. In Massachusetts, the death penalty has been abolished since 1984. And in Colorado, just 1 person has been put to death since the death penalty was reinstated nationally in 1976, and 3 inmates are on death row. Democratic governor in Colorado, John Hickenlooper, granted a temporary reprieve to one of those inmates in 2013, citing his concerns with the death penalty, a decision that came back to haunt him in the 2014 election, where he was ultimately reelected. Still, Mr. Steinhauser in this case emphasizes that the decision will ultimately be about James Holmes and the evidence jurors are presented with. So let's just hope that the juries in both of these cases can make a moral decision collectively. I mean, they have to put their heads together in both of these cases, so hopefully it all comes together properly. A New Hampshire man accused of trying to rob a 95-year-old World War II veteran was arraigned Wednesday after turning himself in, and as the suspect spends the night behind bars, his victim is offering forgiveness, believe it or not. Arthur Camberis was walking home from getting his wife's prescription at Walgreens when he says he was forced to use his cane to fight off a would-be robber who was after his wallet. When asked if he was scared, the World War II vet told NECN News this was nothing. The suspect, 42-year-old David Farnsworth of Manchester, turned himself in, but told the judge Wednesday he's innocent. Yeah, that's interesting. And he admits that Mr. Camberis said that he admits Farnsworth would never turn violent, but says there's no doubt he was out to get his money. Camberis says, as a, quote, young whippersnapper in 42, he vowed to always protect what's his. And in his 95 years, he's found the courage to forgive Farnsworth. Quote, honestly and truly, I don't wish him any bad luck, Camberis said. He says that there was a young man who drove up and intercepted the crime that he'd like to find and say thank you in person. Farnsworth is being held on $15,000 bail and is due back in court at the end of the month. And here's an interesting one for you, Jay. Stop for donuts, lose your job. I call this one. from NOLA.com. 2 Florida funeral home workers were fired after stopping for coffee and donuts and leaving a hearse containing a flag-draped coffin on display in the parking lot, according to WFLA-TV in Florida. The hearse's curtains were open, weird, and the coffin and flag were in plain view. Yes, it is very weird, Jay. A man on his way into the Newport Richie Dunkin' Donuts was shocked by what he saw, so he took video, shot a photo, and confronted the funeral home workers, the story said. The workers were transporting the body of Lieutenant Colonel Jesse Coleman, who died at age 84. He was a soldier who served 1 tour in Korea, 2 in Vietnam, and was awarded numerous medals. The body was being taken from Veterans Funeral Care in Clearwater to Lacano, Florida for a funeral when the workers made a stop for donuts, according to the story. Funeral home owner Jim Rudolph was sickened by the news and considered suspending the workers before deciding to fire them, the report said. He said the men, who were stellar employees, were heartbroken and extremely remorseful. Yeah, you should have gone for your coffee and donut run before making your funeral run, guys, because that's how you get canned.
Yeah, the only exception I see when you're stopping with the hearse is if you need to put gas inside the tank of the funeral vehicle. That's the only exception I see to that rule. Yeah, get the donuts after you drop the hearse with the...
Or at least draw the curtains. I mean, don't do any dishonor to a...
You know, it's like...
Yeah, don't do that kind of dishonor to a departed veteran. I mean, the guy may have run into my dad at some point, so... You gotta know that that's an important man right there, one who served in both Korea and Vietnam.
Well,
and I say that because my dad served in Vietnam.
Just shows to tell you, you gotta be careful what you do today, because what you do can affect your life. That's just the crux of it all.
Absolutely, Jay. I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, rather weird one, but it deserves to be said because this was a veteran we're dealing with.
Certainly right. They have to be treated with the uttermost respect, because our military has not dealt with enough respect as it is today.
Yeah, and I was watching not NBC, Fox News the other day. Forgive me for mixing them up horribly. And apparently they had paid the NFL several $1 million just to get the troops honored at football games.
Well, I don't know what
to think. So if they have
that.
To pay for the honors, then you know that they're way overdue.
Yeah, well, you really shouldn't even need to pay someone to honor our military. They should just automatically be honored. And that's all enough said on that subject. On that note, folks,
and we're not paid to say it either.
No, we're not. We need to honor our troops every day for the sacrifice that they give, and not only them, but honor their families who give that sacrifice as well. All right, folks,
cheers.
On that note, we better take our first ad break here at this time. When we come back on tonight's program, the White House is now politicizing that Amtrak crash in Philadelphia, as Corey Evans has been reporting. We'll tell you what they're saying and what is causing Republicans to have quite a fit about it. Plus, John McCain has rejected the Pentagon's push for more Russian rocket engines. We'll explain that. Plus, the U.S. House votes to end spy agency collection of flown data. All those stories and more. Plus, Corey Evans has what's coming up in the business news.
Yes, in addition to what's going on with the Bank of England, I get to tell you more about the ever-expanding, or should I say inflating, Takata airbag recalls. There are more vehicles being added to the now 8.1 million that are being recalled. Wells Fargo is paying out big to this woman in our lawsuits across America, and in addition to CBS viewers getting to say goodbye to CSI, you will find that Nintendo is saying hello to its World Championships once again. Just had to grab it there, ladies and gentlemen, and grab my video game controller, because I'm going to start training for that after today's show, but that's all coming up after the break on the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media.
Fact news. Fact news.
Radio.
Fact news. Fact news.
Radio.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or follow my blog. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Here's radio. There's the closing bell. It's time for the business report on the Evan Miller Report. I'm Corey Evan. The Dow lost 7 points at 18,060. The Nasdaq gained 5 points, at 49.81, and the S&P 500 lost a little over half a point at 20.98. So on balance, it's pretty much one of those days that don't really matter. Except in the Bank of England on Wednesday, they say it remains on course to raise interest rates in the middle of next year, despite sounding a slightly gloomier note on the UK economy. In its first forecast for UK growth and inflation since last week's national election, the central bank said it expects annual inflation to rise back toward its 2% target by early 2017, provided interest rates rise in line with expectations in financial markets. Annual inflation was last measured at 0 in March, but officials expect price growth to accelerate in the second half of the year as domestic cost pressures build and a recent slide in oil and food prices comes to an end. Investors currently expect BOE to raise its benchmark interest rate from a 300-year low of 0.5% in the middle of 2016, according to overnight rates published in the BOE's quarterly inflation report. Macy's is feeling a big chill from international tourists because their money isn't going as far as it used to. This from the Boston Globe. The strong dollar has crimped spending by overseas visitors at Macy's stores in big cities like New York, Las Vegas, and Chicago. That contributed to a 13% decline in profit in the first quarter, the company said Wednesday. The company said bad winter weather and a slowdown at West Coast ports also hurt sales. Shares of Macy's fell nearly 3% in late morning trading Wednesday, even as the company raised its quarterly dividend. Sales from international tourists account for 5% of Macy's business and fell by a double-digit percentage in the latest quarter, according to CFO Karen Houguet, I think it is, in a conference call with analysts. The stronger U.S. dollar made handbags, clothing, and other goods more expensive for tourists who were exchanging foreign currency. Macy's huge flagship stores, such as the iconic store on 34th Street in New York and the former Marshall Field's flagship on Chicago's State Street attract many tourists. Macy's also operates luxury seller Bloomingdale's, which draws wealthy out-of-towners. The company, which has been a standout in retailing throughout the economic, quote, recovery, is the first of the major retailers to report first quarter results. But the results show the challenges Macy's and other retailers are facing. And as I touted at the beginning of the program, Toyota and Nissan, according to the AP, are expanding their recalls over problems airbags made by Japanese supplier Takata by another 6.5 million vehicles. Toyota said Wednesday it was recalling nearly 5 million more vehicles globally for the airbag inflator problem. Some 637,000 of them are in the U.S., people, so if you're listening, get your car checked out. In Japan, it's recalling nearly 1.4 million. The recall affects 35 models globally, including the Corolla Subcompact, the RAV4 SUV, and the Tundra pickup, produced from 2003 to 2007. In the latest recall, front passenger and front driver side airbag inflators can deploy abnormally or rupture and put a person in a crash at a greater risk. That's different from earlier when inflators deployed with too much force, which has affected a range of automakers including Honda, Chrysler, BMW, and Ford Motor Company, and at least 6 people have died worldwide due to that defect. When combined with the earlier recalls, recalls have ballooned to 8.1 million vehicles. So that's just them, people. Ladies and gentlemen.
All right, folks, I apologize. Seem to have lost Corey Evan there. Hopefully we can get him back there, and he'll be back in just a moment with tonight's Global Socialism segments, and we'll have him call back in just to make sure we get a clear connection back up to our studio up in L.A. The White House has criticized Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives for a plan that would cut grants to Amtrak, part of the transportation funding bill that lawmakers were set to consider on Wednesday in the wake of that Amtrak derailment in Philadelphia, as Corey Evan has reported. The House spending bill for the coming fiscal year would cut Amtrak grants up to $252 million from current levels, said Sean Donovan, director of the White House Office of Budget, Management and Budget. I should say that right. You're looking at more than 15% cut in investments in Amtrak, Donovan told reporters on a conference call, noting Obama had proposed a boost to Amtrak funding by up to $2.45 billion, up from current levels of $1.4 billion. Donovan also said the federal investigation into the cause of the derailment is ongoing and cannot be linked to the funding levels. I suspect the GOP is going to have something to say about that. I certainly hope they will. The U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman John McCain has rejected a request by U.S. officials for changes in federal law to let the 2 largest U.S. arms makers use more Russian rocket engines to compete for military satellite launches against privately held SpaceX. McCain's comments reflect frustration among some lawmakers about the Pentagon's failure to halt purchases of the RD-180 Russian engines after Russia's annexation of Crimea. As SpaceX becomes a potential competitor to current monopoly launch provider United Launch Alliance, also known as ULA, a joint venture of Lockheed Martin Group and Boeing Company, billions of dollars of orders are at stake, and both sides are lobbying lawmakers hard. U.S. Defense Secretary Ash Carter and Director of Intelligence James Clapper urged McCain in a letter dated May the 11th to amend federal law so the Pentagon can retain assured access to space. This is a legal requirement that mandates availability of 2 satellites launch vehicles so the U.S. military can always get satellites into space, even if one of the rockets is grounded due to a catastrophic failure. McCain said the letter ignored NASA's role in providing assured access to space, and the law did not prevent NASA from continuing to use Russia rocket engines. That meant NASA could always step in to help in the event of a crisis, he said. What Section 1608 does is prevent over $300 million of precious U.S. defense resources from subsidizing Vladimir Putin and the Russian military-industrial base, he said. McCain, whose committee is marking up the 2016 defense authorization bill this week, has raised concerns about extending use of Russian engines amid reports that Russia is benefiting from inflated prices for those engines. Final D.C. story before I send it over to Corey Evan for tonight's Global Socialism Stories tonight. The U.S. House of Representatives has approved a bill today that would end spy agencies' bulk collection of Americans' telephone data, setting up a potential showdown in the Senate over the program, which expires on June the 1st. The House voted 338 to 88 for the USA Freedom Act, which would end bulk collection and instead give intelligence agencies access to telephone data and other records only when a court finds there is a reasonable suspicion about a link to international terrorism. The strong support in the House by both Democrats and Republicans could increase pressure on Republican Senate Majority Leader and BS artist Mitch McConnell to allow a vote on the bill. McConnell and several other senior Republican senators have said they would rather renew the existing bulk data collection program authorized under the USA Patriot Act passed in the wake of the 9/11 attacks, but continuing the program, which has concerned many privacy advocates since it was exposed in 2013 by former NSA contractor Edward Snowden, would face strong resistance in the House of Representatives. At least two senators, Republican Rand Paul, current 2016 presidential candidate, and Democrat Ron Wyden, have pledged to filibuster any attempt to extend that plan. Mostly framed so far as dealing with bulk collection of domestic telephone metadata, the bipartisan USA Freedom Act addresses activities much broader than phone calls, said government officials and privacy experts. The FBI has used the Patriot Act and court rulings to gather records of hotel stays and international wire transfers by companies such as Western Union. Well, ladies and gentlemen, all I have to say is if Republicans are going to stand up and against this new act of the USA Freedom Act, then, ladies and gentlemen, we better be ready to vote some people out upcoming in the 2016 election, because Republicans are voting to wiretap your phone calls and look into your emails and all your private records. They're not really Republicans at all. Really, Republicans are Democrats when it comes to this.
They're wolves in sheep's clothing. That's what I mean to say.
Yes, they are, Corey. You couldn't have said it better that way. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for what Corey likes to call
our continuing battle against global socialism. It's back. And a grassroots group that runs a woman on the according to the New York Daily News, has announced that abolitionist Harriet Tubman took the top spot in a poll that asked who should be pictured on the currency. The organization Women on 20s started its campaign earlier this year. The group asked voters to decide which famous female it should nominate to replace the bill's current face, former President Andrew Jackson. Tubman edged out former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, the only one I would have considered, and civil rights activist Rosa Parks in the 600,000 voter strong poll. The three finalists were selected in the primary poll meant to narrow down a list of 15 notable women. Women on 20s will now present its petition to the White House. Changing U.S. currency requires an order from the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, which can be directed by Obama, the group explained. Anything directed by Obama, we're worried about. Tubman, a leading abolitionist during the Civil War, was born into slavery, but escaped to Philadelphia in 1849. She became a conductor on the Underground Railroad, traveling back and forth between the South and the North to help others out of slavery. She also provided intelligence to Union forces during the Civil War. After the war, she pushed for women's rights. And while for everyone at the same time, changing out a face on a $20 bill, that's something that has me worried. And here's some good news in our global socialism updates. The House on Wednesday passed a ban on abortions after 20 weeks of gestation, reviving a measure that had been abandoned earlier this year over concerns that it could hurt the Republican Party's standing among female voters. So it's a small victory. The bill, which Majority Leader John A. Boehner in a floor speech, called the most pro-life legislation to ever come before this body, as crybaby-ish as that may be, passed with the support of some GOP congresswomen who previously objected to the ban's restriction on rape. Congresswomen threw their support behind the measure. That wording was tweaked. It seeks to ban any abortions beyond the midpoint of pregnancy before a fetus is typically deemed viable, but after anti-abortion activists say the fetus can feel pain. It faces an uphill course in the Senate, and President Obama has said he would veto it. The House passage of the measure had been a priority for anti-abortion groups, hoping to push the opinion and inject the issue into the 2016 presidential race. At least they're thinking in sort of the right direction. So, when will the liberal boneheads of the world stop devaluing our already weakened dollar? They say it's strong, but it's somewhat weak in other aspects. Where will the future of the family take us? And why can't George Pinocchio say it and not spray it? George Pinocchio from Channel 7, of course, in Los Angeles. That's right, Jay.
Yes, why? Why? Why, George Pinocchio? Why do you spit on the number 2 DMA-rated Channel 7 Eyewitness News? Why? I ask you, why?
Or is it Lie Witness News? At any rate, consider us on the hunt for developments in our continuing battle against global socialism.
Corey Evan with tonight's Global Socialism with a little hint of comedy at our friends on LA television. Thank you very much. And on that note, it's time for tonight's Lawsuits Across America.
And now it's time for Lawsuits Across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evan.
Thank you as always, Mr. Pat Hahn. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Come to order. Lawsuits Across America for this Hump Day Wednesday is now in session. A jury has awarded a St. Louis woman $77 million in damages following a long-awaited legal battle with Wells Fargo Bank. It all started in 2012 when Barbara Morris filed a lawsuit against Wells Fargo after the bank had allegedly mismanaged her family's trusts. This from Inquisitor. Morris, a resident of Olivet, took the case to a St. Louis County Circuit Court late on Monday. Morris alleges that Wells Fargo infringed its fiduciary duty, which resulted in the loss of million-dollar transactions from 2 family trusts, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch reported on Tuesday. According to reports, Burton Douglas Morris, a Clayton-based financier, is the son of St. Louis resident Barbara Morris, in which she was the beneficiary and co-trustee of both his lost trusts. However, Burton's financial practices have been called into question, including accusations of charmingly misleading and defrauding investors back in 2012. So stay with us at Lawsuits Across America. We will bring you the latest on this if any relevant details make it onto the docket. A Roman Catholic priest who was repeatedly sent for counseling decades ago over claims he raped boys and stole parish money was kept in ministry, then sent to New Mexico, where he molested a boy, according to a lawsuit. According to the AP, Brad Hall, a lawyer for the boy, now 58 years old, said in the lawsuit that leaders of the priest's Massachusetts-based religious order had sought permission from a Vatican office to bar the priest from any public ministry, including celebrating Mass, but Vatican officials instructed the order to instead provide more treatment for the accused cleric. The Reverend George Weisenborn was sent in '66 to a Servants of the Paraclete facility in Jemez Springs, New Mexico, and later hired as a full-time priest by the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, which assigned him to a parish where he abused the plaintiff multiple times. Weisenborn died in '91. The suit, filed April 29th in Albuquerque District Court, names the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, St. Francis Xavier in Albuquerque, and the now-closed Servants of the Paraclete as defendants. It seeks the disclosure of more documents related to Weisenborn and other cases. The Servants of the Paraclete opened via Coeli in 1947 to treat priests with alcohol and emotional problems, but almost immediately the center began receiving priests who had sexually abused children. Why is this such a common sin in the Catholic Church? Why is this something that they haven't cracked down on? I'm sorry, it's just perplexing me all of a sudden. I don't get why they aren't doing it.
Corey, it's corruption within the Catholic Church. If they can't get the corrupt people out of the church, it goes right to the top brass, and the top brass condone this kind of stuff, and it's all about the money. It is all
I mean,
about the
they've had several different popes over the years, and none of them have done anything to stop this. This just goes to show you, ladies and gentlemen, why I choose to associate with the Mormon Church instead, because you don't hear about this out of the Mormon Church. Not to boast or anything, but at the same time, you understand where I'm coming from.
What else do you have on the docket today?
I've also got a retracted Rolling Stone magazine article that portrayed the U of Virginia as more concerned about its reputation than a student's alleged gang rape, and has prompted the first of 2 expected lawsuits. Calling the graphic story a monumental hoax, attorney a top UVA administrator sued the magazine Tuesday in a legal claim seeking $7.5 million, according to the Boston Herald, As a top administrator dealing with sexual assaults at the Charlottesville school, Nicole Aramo's lawsuit says she was cast as the chief villain in the discredited and debunked piece titled A Rape on Campus. The fraternity where Rolling Stone falsely claimed the brutal sexual assault occurred has also given strong signals it plans to sue. Inama, Associate Dean of Students at UVA, came off as indifferent in the lengthy and graphic magazine piece about a student identified only as Jackie who claimed she was raped by 7 men in a fraternity initiation. A report published by the Columbia Graduate School of Journalism said Rolling Stone failed at virtually every step of the process, from the reporting by Sabrina Rubin Erdely to an editing process that included high-ranking staffers. Where does that sound so darn familiar? Oh, yes. I think its name is Stephen Glass. But then again, that was multiple stories. Back to this one. No one at Rolling Stone was fired or disciplined as a result of the article. Rolling Stone managing editor Will Dana posted an apology on the publication's website, and Erdely also apologized in a statement. An attorney who has represented the fraternity where the alleged rape said to occurred, Phi Kappa Psi, did not respond to the AP for comment on a possible legal claim. But I will keep an eye on this shattered glass of a story, and I'll bring you the latest updates as fragments make it onto my desk. And on that note, I declare today's lawsuits across America case shattered.
Yes, nothing like shattered glass after lawsuits across America. Just make sure you have
And
the
we
janitor
actually watched
around.
that film, and it's one of our favorite films, isn't it, Jay?
What's that?
Shattered Glass, remember that film? I believe we've watched it together.
It may have been once, and it was a long time ago. We'll probably need to see it.
We're going to have to rewatch, yes.
Have our staff meeting.
Absolutely. And now,
On that
to
note,
entertainment.
It's entertainment time, so let's go ahead, send it over to Corey Evan, and I don't think there's any shattered glass in the entertainment report, but what you got today?
Crime Scene Investigation, aka CSI, frequently named the most watched TV series in the world, has been cancelled by CBS after 15 years. It'll conclude on September...
It's 15 years of wasted time, ladies and gentlemen, at least in my opinion. We just see people get killed, people getting killed, and people getting more killed. Oh, wait. Am I getting on something? Yes, people get killed on this show.
That's amazing to note. It'll conclude on September 27th with a 2-hour feature-length episode starring William Peterson, who played Dr. Gilbert Grissom for a decade. Mark Helgenberger, who played blood spatter analyst Catherine Willows for 13 years since the show's inception, will also make a return. It was canceled after scoring just over 11 million viewers with its latest season. At its height, CSI attracted 26 million American viewers and 63 million worldwide, so that just goes to show, after a period of time, folks will figure out, it's just the same thing over and over.
It's
a recycled script. I thought we called it monotonous yet repetitive.
That too. Well said. That's where the meat comes in.
There we go. Next up, Nintendo has announced, using a pretty cheesy video according to Slash Gear, that it will be bringing back the Nintendo World Championships. This is the first time the gaming company has held such an event in 25 years, making it particularly notable, and it will be held in LA on June 14th. Nintendo announced the news today as part of an E3 teaser video. Nintendo also says that it will be having its next digital event on Tuesday, June 16th at 9 a.m. Oh boy. And they posted their announcement on their YouTube, where it's published the video, and it's all pretty cheesy, but the announcement is pretty exciting. At least it will be when I relay this to my Jennifer, because, ladies and gentlemen, I am marrying a gamer. I will admit that freely and candidly, and I can't wait.
I I better stay away from the house for the honeymoon. That's all I gotta say, because I am not a gamer.
Well, we'll be in Wyoming for that, but that's another story.
Look out.
Get along, little doggies. Yes, get along, little doggies. And opening this week at the box office, it's Pitch Perfect 2 with Anna Kendrick and Rebel Wilson, Mad Max Fury Road with Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron, and Good Kill with Ethan Hawke and January Jones, all of which the critics seem to agree that it's going to be a good week to go see a movie. Currently at the box office, Avengers Age of Ultron has got the critics raving, and the box office is $77.7 million. That's a lucky number right there. And Hot Pursuit is behind it quite a bit of a ways at just $3.9 million. And third place, pretty distantly, but still third place, The Age of Adeline, $5.8 million. That's your entertainment report for today. Hope to entertain you again tomorrow. Till then, Jay, take it away.
Thank you very much, Corey. Corey Evan with the latest entertainment report. Don't know why we're announcing movies on Wednesdays. Maybe it's a promotion for a Friday matinee. That's probably the case for a lot of people.
I'm sorry, I added that in there. I'm just a little off today. You can tell.
Well, you know why, ladies and gentlemen? Because it's not every day here in Southern California that we may be getting some rain. And speak of which, that is the Evan Miller report for this evening. Right after I finish speaking, it's the weather with the BBC Met Office's Peter Gibbs. For Corey Evan and all of us here at SHR Media, wish you a great night. Don't forget the Sackheads Radio Show, 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, right here on SHR Media. Coming up next, after the weather, the Exceptional Conservative Show with Ken McClinton. And now, with the National Weather Forecast, here is Peter Gibbs. Good night, everybody.
If El Nino persists right through to the end of the year, it could bring some much-needed winter rainfall for California. Mind you, ahead of that, an atmospheric ripple set off by Typhoon Null has been spreading across the Pacific, and that could start to push some showers into California over the next couple of days. Meanwhile, another area that's been badly hit by drought, Texas, has seen some heavy rain over recent days. That's going to move on across the plains towards the Midwest through the course of the day on Thursday. But you can see those showers beginning to turn up across California by that time. Drier on the East Coast and a lot fresher than it has been over recent days. But actually Thursday brings showers almost anywhere from southern parts of British Columbia right the way down through into Utah, across into California. It's going to be sporadic rain, so probably not doing much more than dampen the ground. But of course, every little helps at the moment. The dry story, though, continuing across most of the East Coast, particularly the northeast. Cooler than recently, as I say, 18, 19 Celsius, or the mid to high 60s Fahrenheit for New York and for Washington. Rather warmer further south as we get into the tropical regions across Florida. And here you're more likely to see one or two showers, although they'll be few and far between, I think, in Miami through Friday and Saturday. Temperatures beginning to pick up again by Saturday in New York, but rain arriving at the same time. The showers not lasting that long in Los Angeles, back to dry weather once again.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.